This video will describe the feature adjustment rules. Before I open this dialog, I'd like to comment. We, as we're building these source texts, these semantic representations, we have a feature set. If you want to see the feature set that we use, you can see it here. We have these syntactic categories: clauses, noun phrases, verb phrases, etc., nouns, verbs. And for each syntactic category, we have these features. So for clauses, we have type, illocutionary force, topic, noun phrase, speaker, listener, etc. We include some spares. So here's the feature set that we use as we're building these source texts. No language will use all of the features that we use. For example, if you look at verbs and time, present, immediate past, earlier today, yesterday, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, a week ago, we chose these features and these feature values to accommodate a very wide variety of languages. But no one language will use all of these values. So the purpose of the feature adjustment rules is to help you transform our set of feature values to a new set that will accommodate your language. For example, here we can see that noun number is trial. Well, many languages don't distinguish trial from plural. So we can come here to the feature adjustment rules, and we see three options: hide features, collapse feature values, and add new features. First, we have hide features. For a new language project, only a few are hidden. For example, noun, future expansion. We haven't done anything with that feature, so that will be hidden. For a new language project, the features that are related to speech, direct speech, for example, speaker, listener, speaker's attitude, etc., those are hidden. If your language needs these, if you have some system of encoding honorifics, you can unhide them. And now when we look here, we see the values for speaker, listener, speaker's attitude, speaker's age, etc. And I'd like to mention, when we come here to a grammar rule, right now number is singular, dual, trial. We have all of these values. And if we look at clauses, we have speaker, listener, speaker's attitude. We see these features. If we hide those features, let's go back and hide those features. So clause, speaker, listener, speech style. Now they're hidden here, and they're also hidden when we write our grammar rules. Now if we look at the clause features, you don't see any of the features for speech situations. So that's what the hide features does. Next comes collapse feature values. So here we have nouns and number, and here are the possible values. As I mentioned, singular, dual, trial, quadrial, pockle, and plural. If your language only distinguishes singular, pockle, and plural, we can drag these values down. So dual collapses to plural, trial collapses to plural, quadrial collapses to plural. And now if we look, we see that book is marked as plural, the number equals plural, and we can see that in this pop-up, features changed from number equals trial to plural by transfer grammar, feature adjustment rules, feature collapsing rules. And if we look at an empty grammar rule, now for number we just see singular, pockle, and plural. So the values trial, quadrial, etc., those are hidden, and you won't see them in your grammar rules, and you won't see them in the semantic representations. Other values that you'll want to consider collapsing include proximity. Here are the values that we use: near speaker and listener, near speaker, near listener, remote within sight, remote out of sight, temporally near, for example, this weekend, temporally remote, for example, that month, contextually near with focus. In English we would say this. For something that's not physically present, but you're talking about it, contextually near with focus is this, contextually near is that. Now sometimes you'll want to collapse these and you'll want to add new values. For example, we can add a new value, proximal, and we see it down at the bottom, and distal. English just uses this and that. So it's convenient for us to write our rules with proximal and distal. For example, Near speaker and listener will be proximal. Near speaker is proximal. Near listener will be distal. In English we say that. Remote within sight, distal. Remote out of sight, distal. Temporally near, we would say this, so proximal. Temporally remote, we would say that, so distal. Contextually near with focus, proximal. Contextually near, distal. So now, when we look at an empty rule and say features, for proximity we just see proximal and distal. And in the background, all of those values, like near speaker and listener, temporally near, etc., they're collapsed to proximal. And the other values are collapsed to distal. There are other values, for example, person. We have first, second, third, first inclusive, first exclusive. There's a default rule first, second, and third. You can uncollapse values. You can say reset rule. If you want to collapse these yourself, but then change your mind, you can do the undo. So now first inclusive is back in the main line. If you collapse some values, but then later change your mind, let's say we want to move first inclusive back, we can say remove and say first inclusive, and now first inclusive is back again. Okay. We've talked about this. Other values you want to change are verb, time. There's a default for past, present, and future. So here it added two values, past and future, and all of those levels of past tense are collapsed to past. All of those levels of future tense are collapsed to future. And you can see those if we go here, verbs, time. So here are the new values that it added. The values that you add will be highlighted in light blue. The values that we add, that we use, are all in white. Okay. If we go back to nouns, proximity, you'll see the two values that we added, proximal and distal, highlighted in light blue. The values that are in the source text are here in white. One more. Let's talk about adding new features. There are 6 options here. The first 3 are for clauses, and the last 3 are for noun phrases. If we rest our cursor here, the last one is rhetorical questions, not applicable for this particular sentence. We can add a rule. These are rules. I'll show you the rule. You don't need to understand these rules. We write them for you. And what this one does is it adds adverbial clause type. It's very convenient to write rules based on if it's in an adverbial clause, a purpose adverbial, a conditional adverbial, a hypothetical adverbial. Also stative clause type. We have 23 senses of the verb to be. An equative sense, a class memberships, an attributive sense, an existential sense, etc. And voice. Let's go ahead and activate these 3 for now. And now they're added here. So now we see 3 new features at the end. Voice is active. That's a very simple rule that says if the topic noun phrase is the most agent-like, then it's active. We can look at a passive if we go to verbs 127. Verbs 127. So here, if you look at the third one, topic noun phrase is most patient-like. So now the new feature that we added is passive. So that's a very simple rule. Let's look at another one. Let's go to clauses 176. Here's an adverbial clause. And we see the feature, that last one. Adverbial clause type is hypothetical, if sense be. So that's a very simple rule that says if there's this if sense be in an adverbial clause, then set that feature to adverbial clause type equals hypothetical. Now your grammar rules can look at that clause. For example, if we come here, look at the features, go to clauses. Now over at the end, adverbial clause type and hypothetical sense be, is right here. Stative clause type we just added, and voice. So these are new features added. They're available in your rules. You see them in the semantic representations here, and you see them in your rules. These last three are for noun phrases. If your language has voice, then you'll probably want to activate grammatical relation with voice. And that's another rule. It's a very simple rule that says if the topic noun phrase is most agent-like, then the agent will be set to subject. If the topic NP is most agent-like, then the patient will be set to object. So these are different rules. Again, you don't need to understand these. All you need to do is activate them, and the rule will do the other work. Grammatical relations with voice. If we look here, so this is the topic NP is most agent-like, so it's active, and we see that agent has been set to subject. And if we rest our cursor here, we see the various changes. The last one, oblique, was changed to subject by transfer grammar, feature adjustment rules, initialize grammatical relations with voice, structure 1. Okay, the patient was set to the object. There's one more that's useful, having the noun phrase marked as relativized, yes or no. Again, that's a rule that we provide. You can simply activate it. And let's go to clauses 125. So this is saying the man that John saw liked Mary. So the man that John saw. So here, if we look about halfway down that pop-up, we'll see relativized equals yes. And if you look at those, the last line in the pop-up says features change from relativized equals no to yes by transfer grammar, feature adjustment rules, tag all relativized noun phrases, structure 3. So now our rules can use that feature. You don't have to write that rule. Our system includes it. All you do is activate or deactivate these rules.